Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight we'll be doing another class in the series on Leo ascendant and the sun and the different signs. And tonight we'll be doing the sun in Gemini. The sun in Gemini falls in the 11th house. When a person has the sun in when the person has the sun in the 11th house, it sort of indicates a desire for 11th house affairs. 11th house affairs is connected with it's connected with large organizations, groups. A person wants to be parts of groups and organizations, and the friendship with people is very important. It's the sign of the house of friends, and so those areas of life are going to be important. And of course, with the Leo rising, the 11th house will fall in Gemini. So Gemini, again, there'll be friends that'll be, for example, you have the sun in Gemini in the 11th, so you'll have friends that maybe are important, writers or something like that, in newspapers, magazines, or they could write books, or they could be people that, travel, they make their fame by traveling. But there'll be a tendency towards friends that are important in different fields that are connected with the sign of Gemini. And I've seen a lot of charts like this where the person is a writer. I think I remember the chart of Bill Moyers. I don't have it with me, but I think he was a very famous journalist, television correspondent, author. It has like an intellectual type of television show. And so he was a Leo rising with the sun in Gemini. It gives you like big success in areas of communication. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. And as a person who's got the sun in Gemini in the 11th, they're going to be involved in communication. Not only, and that doesn't have to be like specifically writing or newspapers, but it can be any of the media forms of communicating. Television, books, all sorts of ways of communicating, radio, internet, right? A person who's it makes a person can be very successful in the field of communication. Tonight I'm going to do somebody's chart who communicated also, but in the very unusual chart. I don't know too much about the person, but again, I found that I'm looking for like examples to use, and I found the chart of this man. He was I remember some of his paintings. Very famous painter. His name was Maurice Cornelius Escher. He was a Dutch-born painter. He was known for a very convoluted and very mathematical type of paintings. He tried to express, for example, what infinity was, and through his pictures, and it was like very, very complicated. It was almost like a class in mathematics more than a class in pictures, a class in studying what the infinite was, and things like that from his artwork. And if you look at his chart, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in Gemini. This is a very important time of year. Remember, there's a lot of famous rabbis that were born about this time. They had 4 or 5 planets in Gemini and 2 planets in Sagittarius that opposed them. But the rabbis, I don't have any of their birthdays or access to it, so I couldn't put them up. But we'll look at his chart a little bit. In any case, so he had a stellium. When you have a stellium, 4 or more planets in a sign, so that sign competes with the ascendant. So technically it's not really a great example for Leo rising, but since the sun is part of the stellium, I guess we can use it. And so you see with the 5 planets there, so the sun, when the sun is in Gemini, its dispositor becomes Mercury, because the sun is in the sign of Mercury. So again, Mercury is a writer, communicator. In his chart he's got Mercury again also in Gemini in Anna. And so he's a very, very good communicator, and was connected to the moon, to his moon, the conjunction. And so he's very attached to his unconscious, right? His mind and his unconscious. So it's very hard to separate between them. When 2 planets are so close together, it becomes hard to separate between them. Someone once gave me the example, if like you stick 2 pins in a person's arm from a distance, so you can feel the 2 pins. As you get closer and closer, the 2 pins to each other, you only feel like 1 pin. And that's something like that when you have like Mercury and the moon together. It's like you can't distinguish between the mind and the unconscious, the emotions. It's like the minds and the emotions sort of go together. And so he was very, very deep type of paintings, and he had 7 everything in air. So he was not a very practical type of man. 2 planets in Sagittarius, fire. So he had 7 planets in that axis, which is really the Sagittarius, Saturn, and Uranus, their higher learning, and the 5 planets in Gemini, the learning down here, and they all combine to make to put him in this like again this idea of communicating through his. You don't really see artwork so much in his chart. Everything is, you see that mercurial bent so strong, the desire to communicate, and he communicated through pictures. But you see, the Venus really didn't make any aspect to anything. It's a little bit connected to the, not really, it's out there in the 12th house, and it's really not connected to any of the planets. So you would say in a certain sense that you don't see so much that he was trying to strive for creating something beautiful as he was creating something like, philosophical, intellectual. He was like someone who drew philosophical, intellectual type of artwork. And so you see it in his chart. I mean, he did have the ruling planet of the midheaven in Mars and Taurus, which is also some art, and the Mars is disposited by Venus, so there is a connection with his career in Venus. But for the most part, I would say he was more like an intellectual who communicated through the artistic medium, but his main purpose was intellectual, philosophical type of, almost mathematical images to project the infinite. And he did quite a good job, and I thank people for listening.